Alright, and welcome to Module 4 of the Mindset Modules for Series 1. If you're watching this module by now, then chances are you'll have seen the last module or page on my website where I said that many key areas in our lives, and indeed the niches that other coaches typically target, all come down to the same root cause of you're not good enough or we don't feel good enough about ourselves, which is what this module aimed to demonstrate, looking at each key area individually. Now firstly, don't get me wrong, other coaches that target niches are still helpful if the niche that they target is the one you really want to work on. And there are some brilliant coaches out there that are great at what they help people with. The beauty of my approach is that by locating, understanding and addressing the root, you can apply what you learn to any niche you want at any time you want. And like we said before, getting to a place where our problems come down to the same root is liberating, because you then realize that if you worked on the ways to deal with that root cause, you can solve all sorts of things in life and you don't even know that you're solving it at the time. And just as a reminder, this series of the Mindset Modules is all about understanding where we are at the moment. Realizing and implementing change is what Series 2 of the Mindset Modules will be all about. So once again, this module is going to be split into two parts, given the number of areas we'll be touching on. I didn't want to launch them all at you in one go, hence the splitting in two. So without any further ado, let's get started with the first lot. Let's kick off with anxiety, worry or stress. Firstly, well done for recognizing that you're having these feelings or emotions about anxiety, worry or stress. At the same time, understand that you're not alone in feeling these emotions, because just about everyone has these feelings in their life, but only a few of us are courageous and brave enough to go, I'm feeling worried, anxious or stressed, no matter what it's about, and I want to feel different. Now, as we said before, an emotion, getting my grammar right, is a chemical reaction in our brains and systems that lasts 90 seconds if we let them pass. But the trouble is, at the moment, when we feel an emotion, we react immediately, which is guided by our unconscious mind, i.e. our ego, to both protect ourselves and fulfill a need that we have, which ultimately leaves us feeling anxious, worried or stressed. Now this can trigger the belief that we're not good enough. As an example, I recently learned that there's a phenomenon called maths anxiety, where, as the name suggests, it's a feeling of worry or uneasiness that interferes with our ability to do maths. So someone that says they're not a numbers person is basically them saying they're not good enough. Now, studies have shown that maths anxiety can cause a decrease in working memory, which is a part of your short-term memory that holds information while solving problems. So maths anxiety doesn't just make you nervous, it can actually hurt your maths performance. And this performance can make your anxiety worse, because now you've got the belief that you're no good at maths, i.e. you're not good enough. You're therefore self-prophesizing about yourself, i.e. you're creating a loop that's hard to break out of. There's another key point to make here, and that is when someone comes up to us and we say to them, I'm feeling anxious, not because of them, but that's the natural state that we're in, and they go, oh, it's not anxiety, pump yourself up, come on, keep positive, try a breathing exercise or that kind of thing. All sentiments that mean well, but you're hearing these words but they just don't land. You still feel anxious no matter how much pumping someone tries to initiate in you, and you don't want to do the things that they're talking about to flip the feeling around. Inherently, that's you understanding that, well, this would be just hiding what you're feeling and not dealing with the anxiety in the first place. That's essentially viewing anxiety as a negative emotion. And what's more is that we now get the message from others by this manner that it's not acceptable to feel these negative or unacceptable emotions, i.e. when we feel an unacceptable emotion, we're not good enough. Now that's a subtle yet significant change, because remember, we've been taught through our program experiences that some emotions are negative, so we look to suppress them. But it doesn't stop us experiencing them. And when we do, we remember that from our programming it's not acceptable. We therefore feel like shit and therefore not good enough. Now the change we make here is that we treat all emotions equally, so we can accept them when we feel them and drive the improvements readily ourselves. Now personally, this was a big step for me, because as someone who's been a natural worrier and experiencing states of stress, I've changed my views on my emotions and accept that I can feel these from time to time, but they don't overshadow me now. Now it's something I'm still working on, because as we said, we're always a student. And like with a lot of this work, I recognise I'm always learning and I can still stay kind to myself. Now we go on to anger. Has anyone ever told you that you've got a temper on you, or that it doesn't take much to set you off, or you've got an anger problem, or you need anger management, or even worse yet, tell you to chill out? And then have you found yourself working on stemming that anger back? You know, things like biting a lip or tongue, counting slowly, taking deep breaths. But you still find yourself feeling angry. You try to hold it in, but invariably you burst out at some point. If you answered yes to any of the questions previously, or even if you didn't, you have the perception that anger is a negative emotion. You know, he's an angry person, he's not nice, she gets angry quickly, best to avoid her, you know, that kind of thing. This comes back again to the often made point from our upbringing that we've labelled emotions as positive or negative, i.e. the problem is not the emotion itself, it's what you feel about it. Because essentially, anger isn't a negative emotion at its heart. Because you could think of anger as comprised of two parts. One, anger that is suppressed manifests itself as rage. So all those times you tried not to get angry in public because it's not nice, or the done thing, or worried about how other people may react, because we fear we'll be judged badly by others and hence feel we're not good enough. We suppress that anger. But if we suppress it, it doesn't go away. It's stored in us, in our bodies, until one day the resistance or dam breaks from a tiny thing and we rage. And we've all seen descriptions of what that kind of rage looks like, you know, being loud, intimidating, shouting, physical, bit like the Incredible Hulk. Now that's something we call overt rage. Now I exhibited it a lot as a child and through my adolescent years, but there's also something called covert rage. So these are things where we pick up from others things like silent treatment, sulking, minimal responses when you go to someone, yeah, I'm fine, in a terse manner. Body language reflects it. There's a lack of eye contact, arms folded, sarcasm, and a lot of passive-aggressive comments. So here we see that anger isn't the problem. It's the rage that the suppressed, unresolved anger has become. Now the step towards resolution here is to accept, feel, and express our emotions healthily as they are. Now, for example, a very practical way to deal with anger or these kind of emotions is to simply say what we feel out loud. Secondly, we can think of anger as a heating agent. Now what we mean here is we can use it to heat up cold emotions because we don't want to express the cold emotion. Now what I mean by cold emotion, it's typically those that are natural, like grief, sad, doubt, hurt. But if we express those out loud, again, we're fearful of what other people might react with. Especially if, say, you're in a group of your friends. So especially as a guy, which does sound a bit sexist, but just run with me for a second. If we said out loud to our friends, I'm feeling sad or hurt, we might worry about banter or getting, you know, being made of a joke of. But if we add anger into the mix as a heating agent, if you mix, say, sadness and anger together, you get the expression, oh, I'm pissed off. So you might be hurt inside at a joke, a comment, or something that happened, but when you add anger, you can translate it to, I'm pissed off. Now, the group around you, especially guys, might translate more into that, also relate more to that, about, okay, pissed off is something I get. Now, at the times you tried not to get angry, because it's not nice or the done thing, or will be judged badly by others. It's again the idea we're fueling that anger or rage is an unacceptable emotion to display, so that if we do end up displaying it, we're not acceptable, and hence we feel we're not good enough. Next comes depression, including suicidal thoughts. Now, the messaging here, also that you're about to hear, may be slightly different from what you've read or seen previously, but I wanted to highlight another seemingly innocuous behaviour that a lot of us engage in, which fuels the message of not being good enough. Now, as a word of warning, or just to let you know, some bits might be tough to hear, and it's not my intention to be there for shock value or trying to jolt you into believing something else. It's just my experience and observations. When I typed this, at time I was in my late 30s, and I can hand on heart say I've experienced moments where I've contemplated what it would be like if I wasn't either born or around anymore. Now, this has come from someone that was a high achiever at school, often at the top of the class, the sort of the standard bearer, golden boy, my family, community, etc., and landing a job at one of the world's self-confessed prestigious investment bank. Much of an oxymoron as that might sound. Now, at first I thought the reason why I might experience these moments is that I hadn't fulfilled that master plan in life that others around me had done and achieved. Get a partner, get a family, have a great job, have a great career, etc. So the non-achievement of these things made me feel like I'm not good enough. And what's more, achievements like, learning to play guitar and write my own music myself was all well and good, but it wasn't on the master plan of life that people around me expected to achieve. And having gone through other life experiences where people express feelings of hate towards me and seemingly only talking to me when I could do something for them, it's something I call the dog's body effect or attitude, contributed to me thinking, well, what if I wasn't around anymore? Or why am I really here? Well, my coaching process that my coach showed me is that I'm not alone in thinking this. And that by talking about it openly, you're making that first brave step to acceptance. Because contrary to popular belief, feeling depressed or having suicidal thoughts is completely normal. Now, it was only when I was talking to a dear friend of mine who shared with me that she's often thought about ending her life and coming close on occasion to doing that, that I realised I'd made a big faux pas in conversation. And that was to say things like, oh, you shouldn't feel depressed, you've got loads to live for. And thinking that I was helping her feel better by saying that, when in truth, I wasn't. Now, that's not me saying that, that's not her telling me that. This is me saying it. I wasn't helping. Because what I was doing by saying you shouldn't feel depressed was that I was actually saying it's wrong to feel depressed, to get rid of that. You're not good enough by feeling depressed. So similar to a point we mentioned before when talking about anxiety, worry and stress, you in essence start a destructive loop where the person already doesn't feel good about themselves, and now we're adding to the mix saying you shouldn't feel that. So they embed those feelings further, because now to them it's also not good enough to feel the emotions that they're naturally feeling. So straight away, a big lesson for me here is that to be mindful next time you talk to someone who's having these kind of thoughts. I mean, look, all people, when they talk about this thing, mean well, and they're just trying to be supportive when they're trying to communicate with their friend or family member or colleague or whomever. But just accentuating the positives at them, trying to be a white knight and fix everything, probably doesn't help all that much. I mean, you can of course be there for someone and being supportive. Ultimately, it's their decision whether to reach out or not. But if we acted with some sense of compassion and understanding and reaching out to them with a sense of what you feel is okay, I think we could do a lot better in that manner. Next, we come to low self-esteem. The funny thing with low self-esteem is that it can be hidden in plain sight, because it's there when you're trying to resolve many issues in life. So for me, this was things like not finding a partner, not being able to drive yet, and having social anxiety. sitting right there in plain sight, was the common thread throughout all of them, that I didn't feel good enough. Now, where much of the personal development world goes from here is that they try and boost you with like life hacks and tricks, like standing in front of a mirror and saying that you love yourself. And if that works for you, that's great. I'm not here to say, you know, I'm right, they're wrong. But if you're here watching this, then chances are that and other similar ways or hacks haven't really worked, or that you might be a bit skeptical about them. Because what happens when you look in the mirror and you say you love yourself, your shadow creeps out and going, hello, you don't really like me, but I'm a part of you. That's our shadow speaking. Now, I mentioned low self-esteem here, and it shouldn't really be confused with low self-worth. Now, I go into that detail elsewhere, but for now, it might be worth just going through what low self-esteem looks like, because it'll give us clues as to why we don't feel good enough, or why we not feeling good enough is at the root cause of this affliction. So low self-esteem looks like low self-confidence, having a lack of control in your life, i.e. you're saying that external events and outcomes and scenarios are responsible for the things happening in your life. So if you take an example of trying to lose weight, an internal locus of control would say that, okay, I'm blaming myself for not being able to lose weight because I don't have enough willpower. Now, we know that that kind of message itself of not having enough willpower is destructive self-hate cycles being perpetuated, which we're looking to try and to learn to stem away from. But an external locus of control is to say, I can't lose weight because my partner likes to eat out at restaurants. So therefore, you're not able to lose weight because of something external to you. Low self-esteem creeps up with negative social comparison. The idea that you look at things like social media, where it looks like people are having the glitzy, glamoured life that you're looking for. You know, this could be people in a pool in an exotic location eating watermelon off a tea tray, or they've got a new style or a look or a car or whatever it might be. That constant looking upwards at someone else can be helpful. That they can provide inspiration, they can provide ideas, guidance, a template, whatever you might want to call it. But there's also a sense of, I'm not good enough to achieve what they have. Low self-esteem creeps up when you have problems asking for what you need and want. Because someone with low self-esteem might struggle to ask for help because they might feel embarrassed that they're asking for assistance or support, because to them it implies that they're incompetent at solving things themselves, and they might feel that they don't even deserve help in extreme cases. It creeps in with worry and self-doubt. So even when, for example, someone's made a decision, if they've got low self-esteem, they might worry that, oh shit, was that the right choice? You know, whatever that choice may be. They could also have a lot of trouble accepting positive feedback. So these people typically that might shrug off praise, or, you know, they might hear, say, in a job assessment session with their manager, they'll always focus on the negatives or development points that they hear, and not focus on the credit or the positive things that they've done at their workplace. It's exhibited in negative self-talk. So people who talk to themselves focus on their flaws, their mistakes, rather than, you know, their strengths. And this also belies a fear of failure, i.e. that their efforts are doomed to fail. It's not going to work because they lack the confidence in their abilities. And it also contributes to a bleak outlook, where suddenly they're a little bit like Eeyore, walking around with a sense of hopelessness. There's a lack of boundaries in there as well, in that they feel guilty or fearful that people will stop liking them, so they resort to things like people pleasing. And that extends into the concept of trying to please others above themselves all the time. So invariably, without asking for what they want and setting their own boundaries, Again, they reinforce that external locus of control. So all the clues there are all stemming from the root cause of you're not good enough. What about feeling lost, stuck, or unfulfilled? Have you ever caught yourself saying or thinking to yourself, there's got to be more to life than this? You know, that despite achieving all that you've done in life, that you're not really happy, or just kind of resigned that this is all there is. You know, you can't do certain things now because I've got a partner, or I've got kids, or I'm too old, or, you know, time's passed me by. You know, I use the analogy of a train here. From the minute we're born, our caregivers guide us through life with what they know to help us survive and grow. So it feels like we're all on the same train with the same stops and destinations on the way. So things like nursery, school, exams, uni, job, partner, family, retirement, all conveniently in that sequence of stops. But if your train doesn't call at all of these stops in your life, then people say, oh, you're on the wrong train, which makes you think, oh shit, I need to change trains here, and one that gets on every stop that everybody else is on. So it fuels the idea that we're in a race with people, that they have to get to the stops before you and in a better condition. So the message here is that by not achieving certain things in life, it's not good enough. And hence that transfers directly to us. We're not good enough if we don't achieve these things. Now, even as someone who may have achieved everything on the master plan, or have been to every stop on the route so far, they may still feel unfulfilled and a sense of feeling lost or stuck. So why is this? Well, the significance here is that we don't feel good enough despite what we achieved, because our worth is held externally, so that we feel that by getting to all the stops, or to as many as we can, we'll feel validated by others, accepted, and feel good enough. But we don't, because no matter how many stops we stop at, or how big the thing is, inside us we don't feel good enough because we've repressed part of ourselves that didn't fit in with the master plan. So often we look to achieve things in life, or stop at these stops, to please and prove ourselves to ourselves and other people. Now the crux of it, we feel unfulfilled because we don't actually want these things on the master plan, which sounds a bit weird because, you know, isn't the master plan a proved point? Doesn't everybody go through it? Well, we might sometimes want to take the more exotic journey in life. So rather than say go to university, you might go off traveling, or opening your own business instead of going into a secure job. You know, you want to have more flexibility on your journey and taking more unique stops on the way, shall we say. But we're too concerted with people pleasing and the safety that comes from the tried and tested route. So we look to achieve the master plan all the time, that we forget to ask the question, well, what do I want? So if you ask yourself right now as you're listening or watching, what do you want? Like, not what your friends or your family or your kids or your boss and colleague want. What do you want? Now, small little story here. I asked this question in a speed dating event to the girls I was meeting. If you had all the money in the world all the time, so trying to sort of open the parameters a bit for them, what would you do? You know, try and explore their dream, what they kind of want in life. But I heard afterwards from some other people that some of the girls found that a weird question, which I found fucked up as it is. Like, suddenly all of a sudden bringing up someone's hopes, dreams or wants is labelled as weird, as if we shouldn't be talking about that. Anyway, by merely saying to ourselves, this is what I want, it helps us achieve fulfillment when we do get it, whilst giving ourselves the reason to become unstuck in the first place. And find that instead of being stuck and lost, we actually do things from a place of higher self-worth. And also bearing in mind that we can change our mind along the way. Because at the moment, we feel that, like, if I change my mind, I'm indecisive, I can't stick to anything, and we fuel that self-hate cycle more. But the fulfillment and not feeling stuck will come from the fact that when we do things and ask ourselves what we want, our subconscious starts to buy into it and those changes in outcomes become a byproduct. We move on to addictions. When you hear the word addiction or addict, what do you think of? Is it the headline addictions of drink, drugs, gambling, smoking, sex, and the idea that if you don't have one of these addictions, then you're not an addict? What about things like complaining, or being on your phone a lot, or shopping, or watching TV, or judging other people? Would you say you're an addict in any of those? Now, I'm well aware that addiction and addicts are labels that some people are still a bit uncomfortable with, which is okay. The thing with an addiction, or whichever label you like to put on it, is that you feel that whatever you're addicted to is the problem, i.e. too much drink, too much drugs, too much of something, as well as that constant feeling of saying just one more that keep cropping up. But actually that's not the problem. It's what's driving us to that overconsumption that is the cause. So instead of treating the root, people go for the symptom. So if you're drinking too much, they might say, oh, just drink less. If we're smoking too much, they say, just smoke less. Which may last a little while before they perceive that their willpower breaks or their efforts slow down, and they might go back to their old ways. The roots are ensconced in feelings of low self-worth, centered around not feeling good enough, and that addictions or overconsumption act as a form of escape from these feelings. So when we work on our self-worth, the addiction or overconsumption will fade away because you don't need to escape. And that's something that will happen naturally, where instead of making a concerted effort not to indulge in the addiction or overconsumption, it just won't come up in your mind because we're already serving the needs that the addiction or overconsumption was serving. And we meet these in healthier and more practical ways. I hope so far these examples are showcasing how each one comes back to the root cause of not feeling good enough. Let me know your thoughts, comments and questions below, and tune in to part 2 next time, where we go through more areas in the same manner. For now, feel supersonic.